The first time I smiled after my wife passed away, I felt like I had done something wrong. We had been married for 42 years. For months after the funeral, I kept waiting for grief to reach some kind of ending, the way you wait for a storm to pass. It never passed. It simply became part of everything, part of every morning, part of every meal, part of every chair in the house that nobody was sitting in anymore. Then one afternoon, my daughter handed me a small notebook she had found while going through some things. It was not a diary. It was not filled with long entries. It was something simpler than that, a list of places my wife had hoped we would visit together someday. One of them was circled twice, the Philippines. I stared at that page for a long time, because somewhere in the business of living, I had forgotten that we were still making plans. I had no idea that following one of her forgotten dreams would slowly teach me how to live again. My name is Mason Parker. This is what happened next. Carol and I met when we were both 24 years old. She liked to say she married me because I made her laugh. I like to say she married me because nobody else would have her. The truth was probably somewhere in the middle, and neither of us ever cared enough to figure out which version was more accurate. 42 years sounds like a long time when you say it out loud. It feels shorter when you are looking back at it. Life has a way of blending everything together. The anniversaries, the family vacations, the ordinary Wednesday evenings sitting on the couch watching something neither of us was fully paying attention to. Those are the moments I miss the most. Not the big days, the small ones. The way she would steal food off my plate and then deny it. The way she hummed to herself while she was cooking. The way she would fall asleep before the end of every movie and then ask me how it ended. Every single time, even for movies we had already watched together more than once. Those small things become invisible while you are living them. You assume there will always be another evening, another cup of coffee, another morning. Then one morning there is not. Carol got sick in the spring. At first, we both believed it was something manageable. She even joked about it, said she had too many things left on her list to be going anywhere. I smiled, because I needed to believe that too. But life does not always accommodate what we are ready for. The months that followed were doctor's appointments and waiting rooms and quiet drives home where neither of us had the right words. I will not say much about those months. Some memories still belong only to the two of us. One morning in autumn, I said goodbye to my wife. I did not know it would be the last time. People told me that time would help. Maybe they were right about that in ways I could not yet see. But time did not stop me from setting 2 cups of coffee in the morning out of habit. It did not stop me from turning to say something to her and finding empty space. And it did not stop me from reaching across the bed in the middle of the night and remembering, again, that I was alone. The first year I stayed busy. That is what I told everyone. I mowed the lawn, I fixed things that did not need fixing, I reorganized the garage twice and cleaned out closets I had not opened in years. The truth was, I was not moving forward. I was finding different ways to avoid standing still. My daughter saw it before I admitted it to myself. One Saturday, she came over for lunch, and afterward, she looked around the house. Carol's gardening gloves were still hanging by the back door. Her favorite coffee mug was still in its place in the cabinet. Her reading glasses were still sitting on the side table where she had left them. I had not moved any of it. Not because I could not, because I was not ready. My daughter did not tell me to clean the house. She did not tell me to move on. She simply hugged me before she left and said something I have thought about many times since. "Dad," she said, "I do not think Mom would want the house to become a museum." I did not answer, but I knew she was right. A week later, she came back with the notebook. She had found it in Carol's desk while helping me go through some papers. It was not a travel journal or anything like that, just a small notebook with handwritten notes, recipes she wanted to try, books she had wanted us to read together, places she had cut out of travel magazines and taped to the pages. I smiled at most of them. Then I stopped at one page. In Carol's handwriting, she had written 4 words: "Visit the Philippines." I could not remember the last time we had talked about it. Life had gotten busy the way it always does. Work, children, bills, then retirement planning that turned into actual retirement. Somewhere along the way, our someday list had quietly stopped being something we looked at. I closed the notebook and looked at my daughter. I said something I had not intended to say out loud. I forgot we were still making plans, I told her. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. "So did she," my daughter said quietly. But she never stopped hoping. That night I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, the same spot Carol had loved every spring. For the first time in months, I was not asking myself how to get through tomorrow. I was asking something different. What if it is not too late to finish one of her dreams? Before I tell you what happened next, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. Next week, I am covering the specific financial steps that widowed seniors need to take before making any major retirement decision, the Social Security survivor benefit questions, the changes to Medicare coverage, and the financial planning steps that most people do not know about until they need them. Subscribe now so that video reaches you when you need it most. For the next few weeks, the notebook stayed on the kitchen table. Some mornings I would open it. Some mornings I would just rest my hand on the cover and walk past. One evening, my daughter called and asked if I had thought any more about going. I told her the truth. I did not know. She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked me what I was afraid of. I started listing practical things. The long flight, the heat, traveling alone, being that far from home. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something that stopped me. "Dad," she said softly, "I do not think those are the real reasons." She knew me well enough to be right about that. The truth was not that I was afraid of the Philippines. I was afraid of enjoying it. Because if I enjoyed myself, if I laughed, if I smiled, if I had a good day, what did that say about Carol? Would enjoying my life somehow mean I had left her behind? Would being happy again mean 42 years had not mattered as much as I thought they did? Grief does not always follow a logical path. It just feels true while you are inside it. A few days later, I went to the cemetery. I brought fresh flowers, the same kind Carol had planted every spring. I sat there for a long time and talked out loud the way I had every Sunday since she had been gone. I told her about the notebook, about the Philippines, about how guilty I felt for even thinking about going. Then, I remembered something she had said years earlier. We had been watching a travel program together, someplace in Southeast Asia. Carol had looked at the screen and said something I had not thought about since. She said, "If I go before you, I expect you to keep living enough for both of us." At the time, I had told her she was not allowed to talk like that. She had smiled and said she was serious. Life is too short to stop living while you are still here. I had forgotten that conversation. Or maybe I had buried it because remembering it hurt. When I got home that evening, I opened my laptop. Not to book anything, just to look. Flights, hotels, the places Carol had circled. I spent nearly 2 hours reading. Then I closed the computer. Not because I had decided to stay, because for the first time, leaving did not feel impossible. 3 days later, my daughter came by. She walked into the kitchen, looked at me, then looked at the printed airline confirmation sitting on the table. She did not say a word. She just walked over and put her arms around me. "Mom would be so proud of you," she said. I was not sure about that yet, but for the first time, I hoped it was true. The flight felt longer than it probably was. Not because of the hours, because every mile was carrying me further from the life Carol and I had built together. When I finally stepped outside the airport, the heat was the first thing I noticed. Warm air, the smell of food cooking somewhere nearby, motorcycles and conversations and car horns all happening at once. Everything louder than I was used to. I climbed into a taxi and watched the city pass by outside the window. Small neighborhood stores, children playing in the street, people sitting outside long after dark, talking, not in any particular hurry to be anywhere else. I should have been curious. Instead, I kept thinking the same thing. What am I doing here? That first night, I barely slept. The room was unfamiliar. The sounds outside were unfamiliar. Everything was unfamiliar. At one point, I came very close to looking up earlier flights home. The next morning, I decided to walk. No plan, just out the door and into whatever was in front of me. The streets were already alive. Someone was sweeping outside their front door. A woman was watering flowers growing in old tin cans along the sidewalk. An older man sitting outside a small store nodded as I walked past. "Good morning," he said. I nodded back. Then he gestured toward the empty chair beside him and said one word: coffee. Back home, I would have smiled and kept walking. For a reason I still cannot fully explain, I sat down. His English was limited. My understanding of his life was even more limited than that. But for the better part of an hour, we sat there and talked about our children, the weather, the places we had each called home. We laughed more than I expected, mostly at the gaps in our ability to understand each other. It turns out you do not need a perfect conversation to enjoy someone's company. Before I left, he shook my hand. "You come back tomorrow," he said. "We drink coffee again." I smiled. "I would like that," I said. Walking back to the hotel, I realized something. That was the first real conversation I had started with a stranger in longer than I could remember. The days that followed were not dramatic. They were small. Children waving from doorways as I walked past. Neighbors inviting me to sit in the shade. Families eating meals that somehow always had room for one more person. Nobody knew I was a widower. Nobody treated me with careful sympathy. They simply treated me like another person sitting at the table. And slowly, without noticing exactly when it happened, I stopped introducing myself in my head as the man who had lost his wife. I was just someone passing through, learning the pace of a place that did not seem to be in a hurry about anything. One morning, I was sitting outside with coffee again when a memory arrived without warning. It was years earlier, a Saturday morning. Carol was outside watering her flowers, and I came out with 2 cups of coffee. She pointed at something growing up between 2 cracks in the concrete driveway. I laughed and told her it was just a weed. She shook her head without looking up. "No," she said, "it is a flower growing where nobody expected it to." At the time, I thought she was talking about the garden. Sitting there that morning with the sounds of the neighborhood coming to life around me, I understood she had been talking about something else entirely. Carol had always believed that beauty had a way of finding people, even after loss, even in places they had not planned to be. I looked around. A woman across the street was hanging laundry in the morning sun. Children were laughing somewhere nearby. The man from the coffee shop waved as he opened his door for the day. I smiled. And this time, I did not feel guilty for it, because I finally understood something I had been getting wrong since the funeral. Smiling was not leaving Carol behind. It was carrying forward everything she had spent 42 years teaching me. That evening, I opened the notebook again. On the very last page, in Carol's handwriting, was one sentence I had not noticed before. "Promise me we will never stop being curious about the world." I laughed out loud. Just once, quietly, to myself. Then I looked up at the sky. "You win," I said. "I guess we are finally here." When I called my daughter that night, she answered on the second ring. I did not tell her about the flowers or the coffee or the notebook. I just said, "I think your mother would have liked it here." There was a long pause. Then she said, "I think she would have liked seeing you smile again." I looked down at the notebook in my lap. For the first time since Carol had been gone, those words did not make me cry. They made me grateful. I retired to the Philippines the following year, not to run away from 42 years of life, not to forget, because I finally understood that those memories did not live inside the walls of our house. They lived inside me. Wherever I went, Carol went too. People sometimes ask if moving here helped me forget my wife. I always tell them the same thing. No, it helped me remember her better. Because everywhere I look now, I notice the small things she always noticed. The flowers growing where nobody expected them to. The conversations with strangers that become something more than you expected. The mornings that begin slowly enough to actually see what is in front of you. The simple, ordinary days that Carol spent 42 years trying to show me were the ones that mattered most. For a long time, I thought grief meant holding on to what was. Carol spent 42 years trying to teach me something different. She taught me that love does not disappear when someone is gone. It changes shape. It becomes part of the way you see the world. The first time I smiled after my wife died, I felt guilty. Today when I smile, I feel grateful. Not because I have forgotten her, because I carry her with me in everything I see. Subscribe to Mason Parker USA and turn on the notification bell. Share this video with someone you know who is navigating life after loss and wondering if it is too late to keep going. It is not too late. Carol knew that. It just took me a little while to catch up. I will see you in the next one.